Okay, so
Okay.
here we are for the last recording before Christmas. It is Saturday, November 21st, and I'm here with Nan. And the format today is going to be kind of just a little bit of family Christmas trivia, if you will, and stories. And I think I think there's a couple we can double back on, but I'd really like you to start for your first Christmas with Grandpa, and also the significance of the star that's on top of your tree. So if you want to start there, and then I'll double back. There's a couple other stories I want to make sure that you tell, but let's start there. That would have been 1958. Married
1950,
2 months,
actually,
3 months.
the story of the star really started when Mame was an infant. And
Okay.
so it would have been 59. But we had a tiny little Christmas tree in our little cabin at Ralston Creek. I think it was only about 2 feet tall, but anyway, it had to have a star. I mean, and I grew up with a star on top of the Christmas tree. And what was I going to do? So I cut up an old shoebox and cut the cardboard and made a three-dimensional star out of cardboard with Scotch tape, and and then covered it with tinfoil, and then taped a bobby pin to the back of it. And still today, 60 years later, whatever it is, it's still the star on our Christmas tree. And
It
it's a
is.
little bit worn, but it works.
And still the
And
bobby pin.
still the same bobby pin.
Yeah, well, what I
It's
want to know is who you've bequeathed the star to.
I have not bequeathed the star. Don't have to fight over the star. That's not my department.
Okay,
So you'll have to
okay.
fight over that one. But it had to be a star because Granny had a very simple star on her tree. And that was,
It's
important.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So Christmases when you had a handful of toddlers, I guess would be kind of the next phase.
Actually, of course, the traditions that we had here in our family grew out of the ones I grew up with.
Okay, and
You know,
those
I mean,
were
with Grandpa, we always talked to Santa Claus up the chimney, and his wonderful yuck yuck laugh, and he carried on for everybody, and his voice was booming, and I swore it came down through the chimney. I mean, it was magical. And I mean, I can remember the feeling of magic. And then, of course, Christmas morning, Granny was great at getting us all hyped up. We lined up in front of Pa's study door, which was a big room because all the Groton, they had a lot of meetings in his study. So we lined up from the very youngest to the oldest, whoever was in the household. And of course, I was the front of the line many times until the next generation came along, until Kathy was born.
darn it.
So my gosh, you opened the door and there was everybody's presents, and the Christmas tree lights were even on, and Santa Claus had been amazing. So that was sort of the magic part of it. That was, I just remember, and I also remember the tradition of Pa, even though school was out, he held a communion service in the Groton Chapel at midnight. I mean, literally at midnight. So we walked around the circle and over to the chapel, and there used to be maybe, I don't know, 25 people that would gather because a lot of the faculty were gone. But it was a beautiful service. And
Yeah.
so, that's what I remember is Christmas. And then, of course, Christmas dinner. A lot of cousins and aunts and uncles came from Fitchburg or from, outside of Boston. And Ma had, this big Christmas this big table in the living room, but we also had many other, I mean, I don't know how many people we fed sometimes, but there were a lot.
And did all the kids get wine? I remember when Granny and Grandpa used to come for Christmas, those were the first times we had those little tiny green
Those
glasses.
tiny wine glass. I don't remember that. I don't remember whether we did or not.
It was a
I
big
really
deal.
don't. I don't remember. No. I just remember what fun it was. Of course, when all my older brothers and sisters started getting married, and then my nieces and nephews started to arrive. I was 10 years old when Kathy was born. So you can imagine Kathy and Brad and the Cleveland boys. Well,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I was close enough to their age as they were, of course I was married when I was 20, but when I was 20, Tommy and Johnny were probably 4 and 5 years old. So we gathered numbers. I mean, Christmas, being the youngest of a big family, it was exciting because all my siblings came home.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I didn't get to see them very often. So it was always great fun. And those were the days when the things we did with my brother-in-laws were terrific. As you know, we used to play hockey in the front hall of Granny's house and with a sock and hockey sticks. And I mean, it was just fun. We had a good time.
Very fun. Can you double back? There's a great story that Grandpa used to tell, Dad, Grandpa to the kids, used to tell about when he was in the service. And I will never forget when, and it rotates around plum pudding, and it's almost a sacred fruit. And so go ahead.
That's exactly right, Ellen. And his mother made the most really good plum puddings. I never attempted to make plum puddings. I always made fruit cakes and dark fruit cakes, and then of course mincemeat pies, which he loved. But I wasn't a fruit cake. I didn't master the plum puddings, but Helga Granny did, and Grandpa just loved them. And by golly, when he was on the front lines of Korea, I don't know whether it was it must have been pre-Heartbreak Ridge, but anyway, the plum pudding arrived, and this was his Christmas. What he did, he built a fire, took his helmet off, and he heated the plum pudding in the helmet in his helmet, and then consumed it.
Did he have any liquor to light on fire? Was it what do you pour?
I don't know whether he had brandy on. I don't know if he had any brandy to light it. Maybe she soaked it with some brandy, and if she did, I'm sure he lit it on fire. I have no idea. I don't know that, but I know he cherished that plum pudding. It was one of the most, and how long he was in Korea. Gosh darn, because he was wounded. I'd have to look back at the date, sweetie, whether he was there 2 full years or what. But But if he was there 2 Christmases, I know she sent 2 plum puddings, but he definitely had one.
Yeah, no, I remember him telling the story of opening it, and it was just like
it was heaven.
The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But anyway,
it was. It really was.
People make jokes about fruitcake and plum pudding and whatever, but I love them, and especially when you put that green stuff in there, the green fruit, the nasty stuff. But so anyway, all right. So
Dad loved them too. I mean, I always made. Well, of course, I had Mary Sykes's recipe, which he loved because it was a dark fruit cake, and there were lots of dates and raisins, but not much of that citron.
Yeah,
I didn't like the citron.
Right. Okay, so let's.
And then the mincemeat pies. What he really loved, I put a lot of Cutty Sark in the mincemeat pies.
That always makes it good.
That made a difference.
And I think he really liked the hard sauce on top.
Yes, he liked that. Sometimes you thought it was a little pie with the hard sauce with a little bit of pie on the side. That's the way it was. He obsessed about the things he loved.
I know he did. I think all the kids have a little bit of that in them, which is really great.
It is.
So then, as a kid, I remember a Christmas that involved candles on the tree and an owl. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, we didn't actually have candles. I had an aunt who was Grandpa's oldest brother's widow, who continued to live in Princeton, that's the only Christmas tree I've ever seen as a little girl, and it literally did have real candles on it.
Okay.
And it was unbelievable. Aunt Harriet always had full candles. I mean, he died in the First World War. Uncle Toddy did. But anyway, Grandpa was the youngest of 6 kids, but there were only 5 that lived. He had a sister who died in infancy.
Yeah.
But the oldest boy died in the First World War. And so anyway, but we always used white lights, and that's why you thought they were supposed to look like candles. You'd see.
So tell me about
the saw-whet owl. Grandpa came in the house one day and said, "Come here, Mariah. Go look out there on the back porch. What do you see?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. There's boots and I look up there in the corner. Well, here was this little owl, and I'm not kidding you. Those saw-whet owls were only about that tall.
Show us, because we can't see that.
About that tall. I mean,
Yeah.
they were little. No, they were cute little boogers. And he had dropped his Stetson over it because he got blinded by the glare of the sun on the snow, and brought the little devil in the house and kept him on the porch. And I said, Bart, what the heck am I going to do with a bird flying around my house? And he said, we'll just leave him out in the porch. He'll be fine. It's cold out there and he'll be happy. Well, of course, the owl got into the house. And I thought, oh my God, now what's going to happen? He thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But what happened, and the first time we noticed where he was I think it was Christmas night. And the living room, where we had added that living room on the end of the house, you know, and the Christmas tree lights were on. And there was the saw-whet owl sitting on the top of the tree, bending the star over, just blinking with it. And it was wonderful. And you were mesmerized as a child by this sight. And you looked at and went up to the tree. And then, of course, the lights, the living room was dark. The lights made the bulbs on the tree shine. Mm-hmm. And you were just a toddler. You were a little fart. You grabbed one of those balls, and it was one of those things where you see what a child's going to do, and you just watch, and you can't stop them. You put it in your mouth and took a big bite. And of course it shattered and went all over God's kingdom. And I thought, oh my Lord, but you were fine. It was fine. And I don't know, Grandpa must have gotten the saw-whet owl back out and let him go. Mm-hmm. But it really was a beautiful sight. It really was.
There was a Christmas I know when Grandpa, from reading his diaries, when he stayed in Colorado convalescing from a surgery, and you went east with 3 or 4 little kids.
Three. He was in the hospital in Denver the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Oh my God, that was a trip. I mean, let's see. Lisa was not even, she wasn't even walking. And then, so you can see how young I think May must have been, what, 4 and you were 3? Mm-hmm. Or 4 and 2, I don't know. Because how much older you're a year and a half older than Lisa?
I'm 2, yeah.
Okay, so you were 3 and a half and she was 4 and a half, mm-hmm. roughly, or 4. But anyway, long story short, in the Chicago airport, I had these 3 little kids. I had a big laundry bag full of all your Christmas presents, because that was the only way I could figure. And of course, a big suitcase, but I checked the bag. We had to make connections in Chicago and the flight was late. And we didn't have very much time. So I grabbed a wheelchair, and somehow, for some reason, the stewardess had given you and May balloons. I guess Lisa had one too, but she was, little enough to, and I put all 3 of you in that wheelchair, and we took off running to make our connection. Well, Ellen loses her balloon, and my God, the whole world came to an end as far as she was concerned. Tears and screams, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I said, honey, we'll find more balloons. We gotta go. But then I think the trip was exciting enough in the wheelchair that you forgot about the balloon. And I'll never forget, an older lady was trying to make the same plane towards the end of our race to the plane, into the gate. And I said, ma'am, I promise you, I will make sure you get on that plane. But I've got to get there first with these 3 little girls. So come, and we did. We made it. But it was a horrendous. Oh God!
Lisa was in cloth diapers at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have had, but the disposable ones were terrible. I mean, I probably had them for the trip, but they were terrible to use because all babies got diaper rash from them.
Oh gosh.
They were awful.
Oh gosh. Okay, so fast forward to when we were a little bit bigger, and we started the tradition. The Coriels came over on Christmas Eve, and that started up. I remember those days at Soper's Creek. So take it away there. Ed and Bon and the little kids.
At Soper's Creek too? I don't remember them coming at Soper's Creek.
They did, because Becky and Jen were tiny. And I remember it was really stormy, and
well, probably if the weather was bad or something, because of course Ed's family was so close that they often went there.
Oh,
But
but I remember at one point, Ed played the part of Santa, and I discovered that, and then maybe it was Meeker, but anyway, so
I don't remember them I just remember the Christmas tree falling over and your guinea pigs at Soper's Creek.
oh, I remember those, yeah.
I don't, but in any event, they lived, of course, they lived up at Soper's Creek. They only lived up the road a quarter of a mile, so it would have been very close by. And it might have been, you suppose it was, I don't know, I can't even remember the time of year when Bonnie had her accident, and
Mhm,
Jen was an infant,
mhm.
and Bonnie was, they thought she was going to die when she
Yeah,
had that
yeah.
horse fall with her. But whether, because I don't recall them coming. I know they did one minute. The first year, I don't know if they came as they moved into whether we did this in the trailer or not, but uh, I know they came every Christmas, and it was great. And I'm sure Ed probably did play Santa Claus at some point because maybe nobody else was big enough to go out there and stand in the snow, you know. And we used the same bells. One year I lost the bells. I'm
I
not sure where they
remember.
were. And boy, Jen Coriel said, "How come Santa's got new bells?" So, but it's fun because talking to Hannah Jalmus when they were here, she said, "Oh, I remember that myself, Nan, because I remember going home and telling people I got to talk to Santa Claus." "Oh, you did not," they'd say. I said, "I did, so don't tell me I didn't." And I mean, she had the whole thing.
Well,
And
it
that
was
became a tradition because it's what I'd done as a child. And
right,
the
right. Well, it was.
the magic of Christmas could come alive that way.
I
So we
thought our
tried to
kids were
play it
going to
up to,
graduate. I thought our kids were going to graduate from high school believing in Santa Claus. And finally, I know Jake faked it. I think Jake and Meg found out the same year, and I think just to
keep
play
Sammy going.
along, they faked it. Um, but Grandpa used to love Christmas Eve, and I remember he
Oh,
and
we
Ed
did.
sitting at the table, and the more hooch. I started making eggnog when I was about 18.
Oh, I know. And as they got stronger, they had more and more fun with it.
But also, Dad had that hair on the back of his
Yeah, that little blonde pit in
yeah,
the back of his head.
stand up when he was well lubricated.
It was
And
a
then
little patch of blonde hair.
yep. And then Bonnie
Bonnie would play the piano.
piano. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, and all those Coriel kids, of course, then they got big enough, and then pretty soon their kids came along. So we always had little people in the house, which was so special.
yeah.
And I should have gotten, and I meant to bring it out, and I didn't. It's still in the office. But Meg wrote the most wonderful story about Christmas in the big house.
Yep.
She was about 12, I think, when she did it.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I have it. It's a treasure. It really is a treasure because it captures the magic of Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget her as a little girl telling me that she knew that Santa Claus was one of the wise men because he knew everything.
Yeah.
And
He
I
does.
just thought that was the neatest thing in the world.
He does. Well, this Christmas is going to be different than any before, but it is still Christmas. And I don't know with whom you will spend Christmas, but I know our kids will all be together, and Joe will be here, God willing.
Oh
And
yeah, he will.
so but it is still Christmas, and I think what we need to do is just remember all these wonderful stories. And it's just Christmas Eve at the big house was one of the epitomes of the year for me. I mean,
It was wonderful, Ellen. It was great, and depending on when you guys had mass and we had church, we change the time around, and I think it was always a special time with Bon and Ed because it was a uniquely special time.
Yep,
It
it
was.
was. It was. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. And Nan, thanks for doing this.
Oh, that's all right. But it was just, oh, it's such fun to go down memory lane.
It really is. It really
Really is.
is.
And
And
I'm sure there are other stories, Ellen, that I can't remember that. Oh, I just remember putting together toys with Dad and I putting together those dang bouncing horses. And then he'd pinch his finger, get a blood blister from those big springs. And then some of the grubby stuffed animals that he used to say, come on, can't we get rid of this one? And I said, well, we better be careful which one. This one's favorite, this one so. And usually you noticed, but somehow there was always a new one that filled the gap.
yeah. And
But
I also, he was great at responding to our letters to Santa.
oh, I have those letters.
Oh, you do?
I have some of them, and he brags about what a fine fellow your grandfather is.
Your father is.
Oh, father is that? Yeah, not grandfather, your father. Oh
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah. No, it was wonderful.
And he
Well,
just I'd say, Bart, really? He said, of course. He had great fun doing those. He loved doing.
yeah. Oh, I'd love to see those sometime, Mom.
I don't have a lot of them, but I have some of them. And
Okay.
what I need to do is I need to scan them in color and keep a set for everybody. I should.
Yeah. That would be wonderful. Well, why don't you tell the kids Merry Christmas and we'll
Merry
sign off.
Christmas, guys. And oh, we will miss you all, but it's a happy thought to know that you'll all be together. That's the big thing. So lots of love to all three of you, and Paige and John, if they're with you all too, and Sammy in New York. He will have a wonderful time. So
And of course Milo and Tink, the two.
no, that's right. Who's Tink?
Tink is Paige's rescue puppy that looks a lot like Scruffy.
Oh, okay.
Tinkerbell.
I didn't know what Tink's name was.
Yeah, it's short for Tinkerbell.
I get you. I get you.
But
Okay.
anyway, well, bless you, Mom, and thanks so much.
Well, that was fun. That's fun, Ellen. I can't. It is fun. It is fun, and this is why I have so many. I don't take down pictures. I probably should, but I don't, and because I love to. Each one has a story or reminds me of a story. I'm looking now at Meg as a little girl leaning up, which I don't remember which guard dog it was, but God.
That was probably Spooner or
Spooner,
Sadie.
I think it was Spooner.
Spooner when she's sitting curled up in his.
Yeah, Spooner. And Spooner used to walk through the sheep and make an aisle for her to walk because she was such a little girl.
Yep.
Oh, but fun. Well, Merry Christmas. Anyway.